to exclusive live coverage of the local election of New Bedford here on this November the 7th, 2017, a year ago. My goodness, what memories we have from then. We will cover everything from that great presidential election, but tonight we're covering, of course, the local election, the results that are coming, let's see, in probably a half an hour or so. Joining me is our veteran news director, Jim Phillips, Chris McCarthy, Tom Kennedy, and myself. We will be hosting, and our news director, Taylor Cormier, and Tim Dunn are in the field. Tim will be at the Mitchell headquarters, and Taylor is at City Hall, and we will bring you all the latest results. Right now, let's just welcome everybody, and it's great to have you here. Jim, Chris, Tom Kennedy, this is a tradition. Good evening. So today's election, can we say it was somewhat of a sleeper? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's there isn't any real dynamic race that you might rush to the polls for. But if you knew some of these people, you would certainly plan to go to the polls for. I mean, look, everyone's reason for voting can be different, but to me, what sticks out with this ballot is the number of first-time or new candidates on it. And many of them are impressive people. I happen to see a few of these folks during the campaign, and I can tell you, Phil, I think there was a number of promising people that are going to get elected today because the incumbents in those races have decided not to seek re-election. Mm-hmm. And, in fact, some incumbents may be defeated here tonight. So there are a number of outstanding, I think, newcomers on the ballot, and we'll see how it all turns out. But we know that in these ward council races, for instance, there's going to be new faces on the council. There will be new faces on the council. Surely.
And we're also looking at new faces on the school committee.
That's right.
And, Chris, that may mean maybe, is it possible, a change of policy in the future from where it's at right now?
Well, certainly, Phil, if the school committee changes dramatically, as it very well may. And when I say dramatically, not just the personalities, because we know there's going to be a lot of new personalities in there, but if their philosophy changes with it, you could see a change in the superintendent, ultimately. I do think that the 2-year, 4-year initiative on the ballot for whether you're going to have a mayor for 2 years or 4 years, I think that's a reason for people citywide to come out. I think the mayor's race, it would be difficult to see John Mitchell lose tonight. I think it would, well, I don't mean personally difficult. I mean, I think it's difficult to anticipate that he would lose tonight. But I do think that Charlie Perry will particularly benefit by the ethnic vote that comes out in Ward 4, because that is going to be a dramatic race. I think that we could be, if we're going to be here late, we'll be here on that one, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Tom Kennedy, there's a binding referendum question. Do you think that will pass or fail? What do you think about the future of extending the length of the mayor's term to 4 years?
I think it's going to fail. I think those folks that have expressed their civic duty traditionally to go out and vote are looking at that particular question, and with it is simply developing more questions. Is there going to be a recall provision? How long can that continue for an individual? There are going to be any twilight provisions added to it. Because as it stands now, when you think about it, you could be in office, commit a felony, and they can't get rid of you, mm-hmm. Because there is no recall provision. So 4 years, I kind of agree with what former Mayor Lang has stated in his radio advertisements, that I don't think it is as difficult as people are trying to make it to run every 2 years. And that accountability in a lot of areas of government is what's missing. And I don't think people should give up their right to vote every 2 years.
So, Jim, do you think this question had enough debate? Were people clear enough on it, or was it more of a knee-jerk reaction of, it's a pretty good idea, give them time to extend their plans?
I am surprised by the opposition that's been stated to this question. I'm someone who at least would like to explore this a little bit more. It does seem to me as an observer that the mayor is always campaigning. And it's unfortunate that has to happen. I think, again, more debate? Yeah, I think probably so. But there was a group out there that was very active, the 4 group, if you will, a 4-year term. And there wasn't much on the other side. I think there may have been a late forming group on the other side, but there is a great deal of opposition, regardless of organized opposition. There's a great deal of opposition, generally, to the 4-year term.
Yeah.
I think people in New Bedford, they like the idea of voting every 2 years. It's a way to give the mayor a report card if the mayor chooses to seek re-election. So I agree. I don't think it's going to pass tonight, but I do think it's a question that we need to look at a little more. Maybe flesh out a little more. Mm-hmm. Tom says there are a number of questions about it. Maybe those questions should be put on paper and answered before we try and do this again. Although I don't see it happening really quick if it's defeated tonight.
If it's not defeated, is it fair to say that this question would have sailed through if not for the efforts of Scott Lang, Chris?
Yeah, I think that the big change agent in this discussion was, look, if you look at the Community Preservation Act, I believe it's called, it's a tax on real estate sales. There was no discussion on that in New Bedford, and it went right through. And then people, as we know here on the radio, were calling, going, "Why are my taxes going up?"
Yeah, exactly.
There was no discussion on it. I think Jim's made a great point here, which is that there has been really no discussion on this. There was a pro campaign, and then Scott Lang came out, and then, of course, the paper went and interviewed a couple of other mayors, the majority of them being against it. If you look at in Fall River, they're having a major charter change tonight, possibly. They have a ballot question where it goes through all kinds of changes. And I can't tell whether they've had much of a discussion on it, but it would seem to me that there are a number of changes in the city of New Bedford government that you may want to look at doing as a package in the next couple of years. This recall, this petition contains no recall. I wouldn't be in favor of that. But there's a number of things. For instance, how do you get on the ballot? They're changing that in Fall River. They're going to add more signatures. If someone's convicted of a felony, as Tom pointed out, that will remove you from office in Fall River, assuming these charter changes take place. Maybe how the ballot is arranged in New Bedford maybe could be looked at. Currently right now, it's, as Tom can point to, it's incumbent protection if you're an at-large city councilor.
There's no question about that.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and my friends on the city council probably are wincing right now that I bring it up. But there's a number of things that you may want to talk about, but none of those conversations took place.
In addition to that is, once it goes into place, say it did pass, and you have a mayor in there for 4 years, and he wins re-election, and all of a sudden his future opponents coming out of the council, a mayor can do a lot of things in off years to that particular councilor in terms of campaigning. And in that sense, the accountability, if I serve 3 terms at 4 years and I'm going into my 4th term, and there's that guy in Ward 7 that's going to run against me, I can make him look real bad.
Right.
And those kind of things have to be weighed when people make that decision. I know I tried changing the alphabetical order when I was in there back in the 80s. I got my head handed to me.
Sure you did.
Well, around the Commonwealth, ladies and gentlemen, of voters in 56 communities went to the polls today. 21 cities and towns will have been voting in special elections. We have one here in New Bedford, and when we come back with Jim Phillips, Chris McCarthy, Tom Kennedy, and myself, we'll talk about today being your choice to make your voice be heard. This broadcast is brought to you exclusively by our friends at J&S Guns and Ammo, 195 Perry Hill Road in Acushnet. We want to thank John Leonard and his entire staff at J&S Guns and Ammo for sponsoring tonight's event. And you can watch us on YouTube. You can go to Facebook, WBSM.com, or just leave it right here on your transistor radio, so to speak. We'll be right back. It is 16 minutes past the hour. As soon as election results start coming in, probably in about 20-25 minutes or so, we will bring them to you directly. Right now, let's take a quick break.
Rates and terms vary based on...
WBSM with the election results from today's event, and we are going to be going to City Hall, where Taylor Cormier is standing by along with Tim Dunn in the field. Thank you for tuning in to 1420 WBSM. We find that this is very, very important for a local radio station to be on the air on a night like tonight to bring the results to the community. This is a part of our, reason for being here in the community. And again, thank you to our friends at J&S Guns and Ammo, 195 Berry Hill Road at Acushnet for making this possible. Was it a little strange or out of the ordinary that one of the mayoral candidates didn't advertise too much?
Yeah, it's a bad strategy. I mean, it's a terrible election strategy not to advertise.
Okay.
I would say if you don't have a great deal of money, if you don't raise a great deal of money, then you probably can't do a lot of advertising.
Mm-hmm.
There are methods of free advertising, Facebook and all those kinds of venues. You can post, in effect, your ads. I mean, some people do that. Using the media, doing press conferences, releasing position papers. There are ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really done in this campaign.
Having your lawsuit released.
Yeah, all of those kinds of things. But, that all happened, too, in this campaign. And the fact is that he didn't really take the normal tact that challengers to incumbents take. So I think it's unfortunate, because I think it would have been a better campaign, a lot more excitement to it, I think.
The argument on the other side can also be he only lost by 300 votes in the primary, and that I think shocked the mayor. Certainly the turnout had a lot to do with that. But if you're not able to raise a lot of money, and it's very difficult, that's probably the hardest part of the job, particularly on a local level. If you're not able to raise the money, some of the things Jim alluded to are important, but it may, because of that, became his strategy, that if he can keep this thing with a lower turnout, his chances of winning may be better.
Was this suit that came back from discrimination ill-timed, or was it designed timed the way it did? Because it seemed to be the speed bump for Charlie Perry in this election.
I don't think it was designed to come out either now, or I just don't think it was. I think speed bump is a good way to characterize what happened.
Although, who's the speed bump in the story? The lawsuit or the candidate being run over? Because, quite frankly, look, he's a first-time candidate. Running for the big chair in the city of New Bedford for the first time out is difficult, no matter who you are. Now, we've seen guys do it. Scott Lang has done it. John Mitchell has done it. I mean, it can be done, but it's very difficult to run, particularly as a municipal employee. He's filed this lawsuit at the start, before I think he decided to run for mayor. Then he ran for mayor, whether it's because he wasn't happy with the lawsuit or just was part of it. And then it came out. I will say I've never seen a lawsuit come back this quick from MCAD. Now, I'm not an expert on MCAD, but I have, my time as selectman, we were involved with it, unfortunately. So it came out, and of course, his charges, I think many people find frivolous.
Okay.
You have that, but you also have the situation when asked, I think when you guys interviewed him on the radio, he said that he can't comment because it's still under appeal. That's for one. For two, I don't think he wanted that to come out. But when you look at it that way, you have to understand that, hey, this is a lawsuit against the chief of police. Virtually means against the city of New Bedford. The mayor's going to know it, and they're going to receive the information from that, and it's going to be disclosed. Right. So the timing of all that wasn't good, and it was a hell of a speed bump.
Well, is racism perceived to be a problem in the local police department? I mean, this was, to me, it was a little surprising that he would raise this issue.
Well, if you're a black man in New Bedford, you might feel differently about that.
Sure.
He claimed that the minorities have not received their share of appointments. One of the things he claimed in the suit. And MCAD rejected that idea, rejected that concept. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know how many minorities have been appointed. But if you are a black man in the city of New Bedford serving on the police department, you would probably play pay closer attention
Certainly.
to those numbers. And so I'm not going to say that he's wrong. I'm just going to say that the MCAD found no violation.
Yeah, and I would say that the specific charge that he made was that he found a quote by President Teddy Roosevelt offensive. Not the quote itself, but that the man he found the man, Teddy Roosevelt, our former president, and he actually, in his lawsuit, if you read it closely, he made him comparisons to Adolf Hitler.
Yes.
You know, and then when he was suspended, then he used an expletive that, BS, but he spelled it out, to the entire police department in rejecting his commander, the chief, by saying all your quotes are BS, and sent it to the entire department.
Right.
And then was suspended for simply one day, and then charged that was discrimination. And then they came back to, 10 other officers, including most of them white, have been suspended for one day for similar things. It just sort of all fell apart.
So was this, could you say this was perceived as more of a grudge match between Charlie Perry and the police chief, and secondarily then running for mayor? What do you think, Tom?
Well, I think not being a police officer and not being there, so to speak. I remember a lot of people calling the show on Sunday regarding that particular issue. Or it was one of the shows during that particular week where people were saying, I can't comment on that because I don't happen to be a police officer. And I think that's the crux of it all and how to answer this. We don't serve in the department. We don't know exactly what goes on. And what the perception may be for Charlie may be completely different for somebody else. So I think that's why there's things like the commission to make a determination, and we have to go with that.
You were mentioning Charlie being a first-time candidate and difficult, especially running against an incumbent. But you also mentioned first-timers like Scott Lang, but the difference being they had some political experience behind them. Who was advising, or who is advising, Charlie Perry? Who do you think was his mentor in this? Was there any one person that you could say, well, this was the team? Have you heard?
I'm not sure
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can answer that.
Yeah.
But I do know there are many people just from Facebook connections, just from people in the community who support him. And when you ask them why, they say, well, I've known him for 25 years.
Yes.
Or I've, my kids went to a school where he was the resource officer. He did a great job there. Answers like that. I mean, those kinds of folksy, frankly, homey answers, that make you say, hey, this guy is he's a good guy.
Yes.
And for all I know, he is a good guy. I mean, look, at the Ward 4 debate, we had to ask him some difficult questions about this whole MCAD report. And after it, he came back over to us and shook our hands, said hi, good to see you, those kinds of things. Now, for a politician, shaking hands and offering a compliment or two, that's probably a pretty easy thing. But not after you've been asked some difficult questions about the campaign and campaign strategy. I've known Charlie Perry for a while. He's a good guy.
He is.
Yeah. But I think this campaign needed a lot more planning and a lot more thought.
From what our what our sources here tell us, that John Clark, who was Perry's campaign manager, and apparently he ran Viola Pina's campaign in the past. Look, it's very difficult. First of all, if you're a municipal employee, you can't go out and ask for money. So your hands are tied there. You also, as a police officer, you got an additional layer there because you are dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, and you don't want to be sticking your hand out. Just the perception. It would be different, I guess, if you were, say, a teacher or something. I know the law is the same, but certainly the perception's higher and the standard's higher for a police officer. If not legally, then at least implied. I have only heard good things about Charlie Perry.
Here, too.
He had the greatest campaign jingle, I think, since Jack Kennedy, 1960. Really. I mean, Charlie Perry, Ken, I was walking around the house singing that song. Dwayne DeRock wrote it. It's a great song. You can see it on YouTube. And he had, I will tell you, I thought Charlie Perry, one of his best moments in the campaign, when they asked him about panhandling, which, of course, is an ongoing issue in the city. And he said, look, I don't think there's much you can do. It's a First Amendment issue. He said, however, when they step off the sidewalk into the street, now they're a disorderly person. I can make an arrest.
Right.
And I think that was something people were listening. It was very simple. He explained it, and you said, okay, there's something I can get behind. When he said that to me, I thought, he understands the issue, and he's got some solutions to it. But if you don't have the money to advertise, now I hope that he doesn't go away, assuming he does not become the mayor tonight. I hope he doesn't go away.
Well, let me ask you this. Would it have been a better start had he perhaps looked at a councilor's race or something that was not as lofty as the mayor's race? Tom, do you think that would...
I think that points to the administration of the police department that he's had a problem with it. I mean, he's savvy enough to know that if he does become mayor, then he can eliminate the police chief. And I think that was part of the motivation. But I got to tell you, this time of year I pay heightened attention to elections. And everywhere I go, coffee shops, Keno Hall, all that kind of stuff, they're talking about him. So he's got that going for him. And that can make up for a lot of less funding, if you will, if you don't have the funds. He knows a lot of people. And people know him. Now, whether they're going to choose him tonight is going to be interesting to see.
Well, this will be based, obviously, on who comes out, the numbers. That's going to determine tonight's election, how many people come out. And in Ward 6...
Yeah, if I can, in Precinct B, with a total potential vote of 2,808 at 7:30 tonight, it was 474.
So that's...
And Precinct A, with
very low.
a potential of 4,717 votes, 546. Yeah. You're looking, now you have to understand that there's no ward race there. And there's a few other spots in the city with no ward race, and there's no assessors race. Who I think is in trouble tonight, as far as making a definitive determination, is the at-large people. They rely on those other folks for their fourth and fifth vote. But I think percentage-wise, like I told you earlier today, I think it's going to be between 22.8% and 23.2%. I was off by 2% last time.
Yeah, you were accurate, and I wasn't going to make a prediction, but because of your presence, Tom Kennedy, I said I'm between 23 and 24% is what I just have a gut feeling. It's just something that...
I'm going to stick with the election commissioner.
What did he say, 30?
He said 25 to 30.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's absolutely. I think that's a very healthy... Chris, you want to make it?
I'm going to go with 30.
Yeah.
I'm going to be optimistic here, and I was optimistic with the Red Sox. Of course, I lost, but I'm willing to be the guy who loses, just to be the optimist, Phil.
Yep, absolutely. We are broadcasting live this evening, bringing you exclusive results from this election, brought to you by J&S Guns and Ammo, 195 Perry Hill Road in Acushnet. We once again want to thank John Leonard and his entire staff at J&S Guns and Ammo for sponsoring tonight's coverage that you can see on YouTube. You can go on Facebook, and of course at WBSM.com. We're going to take a very quick break. Our news director, Taylor Cormier, is at City Hall, and as soon as results start coming in, we'll be in direct communication with Taylor. Tim Dunn is out in the field, and we'll hear from him as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to our election night headquarters here. And we'll be right back in just a moment on 1420 WBSM as we bring you live election results on a rainy Tuesday, November the 7th, when memories were made a year ago. Today, well, actually, November the 8th. What a historic election that was. We may even cover that. And, of course, if we hear anything more about the very tight race in Virginia, we'll bring you the latest results there. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. You by J&S Guns and Ammo, 195 Perry Hill Road in Acushnet on a rainy election night. The results are starting to trickle in, and we'll give you what could be the expectations or the upsets right here on 1420. I'm joined by veteran newsman Jim Phillips, Chris McCarthy, Tom Kennedy, and it's a pleasure to be in your company this evening, ladies and gentlemen, as voters all across the Commonwealth are going to their polls to decide referendum questions. And in Fall River, for instance, do you think the race is as tight as some predicted? I was chatting with Barry today, who's very familiar with the Fall River landscape, and he said it was not going to be a tight race whatsoever. He thought that J.L. Correa was going to win handily there. Any comments about...
Yeah, I watched the debate on television on Channel 10, I think it was, and Giselle, so much positiveness about him, and the charges against him were sort of twisted and distorted, and nothing definitive, and I think that's what's going to bury her, the opposition. But for a young guy, he's a pretty sharp guy.
Any contentious fights around in the ward fights, in the
The only one I saw was at City Hall between one of the agents of Jojo Fortz's campaign and the former candidate Felix. Carlos Felix. I don't know all the information on that one, how that started, how it ended, what has anything come from it, but I thought that was just a little bit disturbing to me anyway.
I thought Ward 4 was the most contentious ward race, no question. These two people have been, former Councilor Forts and Councilor Ribeiro have been going at each other here for
years.
Well, it seems like years. There's been 2 elections, I guess, and no, maybe 3. Was it 3 elections?
I think maybe 3, yeah.
This will be the 3rd one, supposedly her last term, and so she is, Jojo has always pressed her about her attendance and other issues, and but she's always managed to hang on, at least through a couple of elections here. So tonight we're waiting to see just where that goes.
Right. That's always been a close race where less than 50 votes always determined.
Yeah. Three votes in the preliminary. 3 votes in the preliminary?
It was.
Yes. So whatever happens tonight, you could perceive where this could even become a recall situation, depending on how this comes out ultimately.
Have we ever had recounts?
Recount. I'm sorry, not recount.
Have we had recounts recently?
Sure. They had recounts with one of your radio people here, right? Dave... When he ran against wasn't a radio guy who ran?
Dave Williford.
Dave Williford. Wasn't there a recount? A recall? Wow. No, recount.
Yeah.
With Lawler maybe, or Jack Markey?
No, I remember he ran with against, was it Brian?
The recount may have been in the preliminary.
Yeah, the preliminary. That's right. The recount. Yeah.
That wasn't the one that had 16 horses in it, was it? It was like,
I had one in 1979.
It's all starting to run together.
You had a recount.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that
130 votes.
When was the last time you were in office? When did you...
2001.
There you go. Folks, we are waiting right now for election night results. Of course, the results will be a determination by who went out and voted today and why. And we're waiting for Taylor Cormier to gather that information. He's at City Hall, and Tim Dunn is out in the field. We're going to hear from both mayoral candidates, and I'm sure others will call in just a little while as the results come in. Is there anything that you wanted to share, Jim, about the numbers so far?
Well, I just hope that we get an increase in turnout. And talking with the election commissioner last week, I asked him if he really feels that New Bedford has 50,000 registered voters, or whatever the number is today.
Right.
I think that number was inflated in 2008. And there may have been, indeed, 50,000 registered voters in 2008 when Barack Obama ran for his first term. But I think that number has dwindled. People who were here in 2008 no longer here. They moved. They've got a new job. They were going to school at that time, and now they've left to make their mark elsewhere. Yes, some new people have signed up, but I just don't think we have 50,000 registered voters. Now, I'm no way of proving it. The election commissioner, Mr. DeBrito, says that it's something they work on every day to try and pare down the list. Or at least not pare it down, but get it right.
Right.
They get a death certificate. Well, that person's off the list. When somebody moves, if they get a notification, they'll make a change. But I don't know. I've moved several times. I'm sure all of you have moved at least once in your life. And I don't know. The first thing I think of is not to. I don't call the election office as my first thing.
It's not.
To tell them I'm moving. That isn't the way it works.
Right.
And I think for most people, that's not the way it works either. So I just think that number is too high. And the city's getting kind of a bad rap with these low voter turnouts. It's not quite as bad. It's still bad.
Right.
It's not quite as bad as we've seen lately.
Right. Ward 1, of course, the largest in New Bedford. How do you think that's going to go? And did it have a good turnout tonight? Do you find that you were familiar with all of the candidates, or were there maybe one or two that perhaps advertised, and the others you weren't really sure about, who they were, who was running? Ward 1. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, I know that the gentleman named Markey, he came in second in the preliminary, he then raised a lot of money and put some of his own money into the race. It looks like he's been spending money, because you can go on now and read the stuff online, the campaign finance reports. So he looks like he's been very active. And Ward 1 always turns out very well. I think also the mayor will, because he did so well there, his team will turn out their vote up there. So that will be a high turnout area. Again, I think Charlie Perry's numbers come from Ward 4. The reason he did so well in the preliminary is because you had such an active vote in Ward 4. It's an ethnic vote. It's just like in South Boston, there's a high Irish vote. It's not unique to the Cape Verdeans to have an ethnic vote.
Right.
But I think that gave Charlie Perry a boost that another challenger to Mitchell may not have had. So now Mitchell's team's obviously going to try to offset that. So I think Ward 1's going to turn out very well, just because they do anyway.
Right. And in Ward 2, a former mayoral candidate there, Maria Giesta. Tell me, Jim, your thoughts about Ward 2.
I think she should win. And I think that she'll attain public office, and it'll be another new face on the city council. Mr. Cartagena, who is very active in the community, I'm sure will show up. He'll get some votes. But I think Giesta benefits from running before, running for mayor citywide, and I think folks are, fairly comfortable with her in Ward 2. It's a big job in Ward 2. It's the smallest ward in the city with some of the biggest problems.
Yes.
So we need somebody to get right down to work there.
When I voted in Ward 3G, I was about 175, and that was about 6:30 in the evening. So I don't know if that's an indication that...
There's no challenger in 3, though, right?
No. Hugh Dunn had no challenger and obviously is in. But I wonder if if the referendum question was enough to drive people in Ward 3 to the polls.
Well, Ward 3 had a good turnout. Actually, Ward 3 is another place Charlie Perry did pretty well. And I think that was... I'm speculating here, but I think it was some reaction to people who live in that neighborhood, either to the marijuana facility, but more importantly, the golf course, the changes at the golf course. There was discussion of Amazon. Whether Amazon comes or not, there is going to be a business development at the golf course. And I think you're seeing some reaction to that. While it's probably good for the whole city, if you live right there, you may not think it's great for your neighborhood.
Absolutely. We also have, of course, 4 that we've talked about in length. Ward 5. Now, Kerry Winterson stepping down. That was interesting. At one point, he said he was stepping down for personal reasons, and that's understandable with all that his beautiful, wonderful wife went through, and then pivoted and said, wait a minute, I think I'm going to be running for mayor. That was a little bit of a twist and a surprise for many of us.
From what I understood, it was a reaction, an emotional reaction to something that happened to one of his friends. And then he reconsidered it and pulled out.
Right.
But in the ward itself, in the primary, that was a relatively close primary between Mr. Lima and Mr. Chase. And just from a campaign standpoint of view, and people have to understand, campaigning and actually doing the job are 2 different things. And there's an art to campaigning. I think Mr. Chase is going to give him a run for his money.
Right.
I think from what I have a sister that lives in Ward 5, and in the last 2 or 3 days there was a lot of activity from the Chase campaign. Whether Mr. Lima was aware of that or tried to counter that some other way or ran out of money, I don't know. But I think that could turn out to be one of the closest races in the city tonight.
It's going to be very interesting. And once again, if you're joining us either on the radio or Facebook, WBSM.com, YouTube, we want to thank you for tuning in and remind you that tonight's coverage is brought to you by John Leonard. He owns J&S Guns and Ammo on 195 Perry Hill Road in Acushnet, stepped forward and said, if you are going to have election night results, I want to do my patriotic duty and sponsor it, and we thank you so very much for that effort. We have any results coming in yet?
Mayor Mitchell giving what sounds like a victory speech right now.
We have Mayor Mitchell, who's giving what seems to be a victory speech. All right, can we go there right now, ladies and gentlemen? All right, here we go to where Mayor Mitchell is giving his what seems to be a victory speech right now, right? Here we are. I think we lost audio there. While we reconnect, folks, this is obviously... Oh, here we go again. Here. Oh. You're hearing the applause from John Mitchell's headquarters, the winner of tonight's mayoral contest.
Important to note, there are no official results yet.
Okay, no official results have come in yet, so we're just... Actually, we're listening to Tim Dunn, who is there on the scene. Now, I couldn't quite
I couldn't understand those numbers either.
Okay, so we'll just keep it potted up right here and keep an eye on that. In the meanwhile, the numbers should be coming into City Hall right about now. You're hearing the exuberance and the joy of the supporters of Mayor John Mitchell, who has defeated mayoral candidate first-time runner Charlie Perry, who waged quite an interesting campaign because in the preliminary, it seemed as though it was a very, very close race. A lot of people responded to Charlie Perry.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the numbers actually are as far as the difference.
I mean, it was a low turnout, Phil, very low turnout.
So was that the vote that was going to vote for him, and that was it? That was pretty much the...
Well, I'm sure he'll get more tonight, but I just think that the Mitchell vote, when you've been in office for 6 years, there's a tendency to say, well, this is preliminary, my guy will do okay,
Right.
and then I'll go out and vote for him in the final. And I think that's what happened this year, and I think this vote will be considerably higher. I'm hoping the turnout's considerably higher, and we'll see what we can see from the final numbers. The numbers will tell us. If this is a victory speech, I'm a little surprised he waited he didn't wait to talk.
Right.
We got some numbers in to look at.
Right. So Matt Costa and Tim are here. They are obviously producing this program. Do you want to go back to the Mitchell headquarters right now?
He's telling jokes now, apparently.
Okay. Well, all right, we'll keep it right here until we actually...
That's why I thought I was here.
It's a delight to have you here, Chris. We are going to be expecting a phone call from our news director, Taylor Cormier, from City Hall to give us the numbers coming in. And this is usually the time that everyone is there. Charlie Perry, I believe, is going to be at City Hall. That's what I understand. He, from what I understood, didn't have so much of a party set up tonight, but was going to make whatever concession or speech, victory speech from City Hall. So that's what we can tell you so far. It does seem a little strange, though, that he would be, Mayor Mitchell would be giving his victory speech before we actually get the numbers in here. But
I think sometimes when candidates have people out there waiting,
of course,
there's a feeling that I have got to go out and say something.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, he doesn't want to seem like he's on the fence.
Right.
But I would just tap the brakes a little bit.
Well,
I mean,
For me, I would tap the brakes.
Yeah.
Don't forget, they do block counts in the precincts.
Right.
If you're highly organized.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
you can really,
You
if
know.
you're going to win big, you can project that.
Right.
And you're sort of safe. I mean, if you didn't think you were safe, I don't think you would have made the speech.
Right. Absolutely. Of course not. And, we also have numbers coming in from Ward 4 now, and, that could be a very, very close race. No doubt about that.
I would imagine that the mayor has had his people right there in the bellwether precincts. He knows where he needed to do, what he needed to do, where he needed to do it, and is pretty comfortable. Based on, I think we heard him partially giving out some numbers there. They'll ebb and flow a little bit, but they pretty much know. What I think is most interesting, and you gentlemen probably know better than I do, just having more of a historical knowledge of it, but I don't think we've ever had this many open ward seats.
I don't think so
in
either.
a single election. I mean, you think of Kerry Winterson, champion kickboxer, who's giving it up. Jim Oliveira, who long-time veteran literally, and giving it up. Ward 2, Mr. Martin was leaving to do something else. Just opted not to, but he's leaving. Really, I've never seen this many open ward seats at one time.
It's a chance for a real change in the city council.
Yes,
it's a chance for new ideas.
Yes.
For new priorities, perhaps. I would hope that the newcomers come in prepared and ready to approach the job perhaps with a little more vigor than many newcomers come in. I think the general feeling by newcomers is, hey, I'm new, I don't want to step on any toes. Well, that's admirable for the first night. That's admirable. But after that, you're a city councilor.
Right.
And we need your help. City of New Bedford needs your help. I don't think it should take you 3 months to come up with a few ideas, get them on the council agenda, and start the work, the necessary work, through committees and all that stuff to get some things going.
It does take a little while to learn the language.
Absolutely.
The parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, and things of that nature. But I think once you get one item on the agenda and you watch it either get destroyed or passed to a committee, then you feel more comfortable. And I think, from the crop of people that are out there, I think we'll be okay. And this is the first time in a very long time that three people are going to be replaced, and you may get more. You don't know about the large race tonight.
And of course, if this description holds, then you might have to look at Ian Abreu as perhaps somebody who is going to do very, very well. Right now, let's go to our phone lines, and I believe we have. Is it hello there? Is this Mayor? Did the mayor win?
Well, now let's just circle back here for a second, because the blockage now is over for candidates who are going to run, or guys who are running. What do you, Tom? You mentioned as we started here that maybe some of the incumbent at-large candidates would be at risk. What do you think?
From the 4th to the 7th, it's going to be within 1,000 votes, no matter who they are. I think because of the small turnout, the multiplier that an at-large candidate receives. For example, down my way in Ward 6, if there was another 3,000 people come out, that's 15,000 distributed votes.
Right.
That ain't going to be there tonight.
Right.
So it's more of the people that are going to vote for 1 or 2 people versus a lot of people who used to vote for 5.
Right.
That's where they benefit. So that ain't going to happen tonight, I don't think.
Do you think, Tom, there's only 2 challengers? So you had Dr. Christopher Burrell, and who raised money and was advertising and active, and then you have Mike Jansen, who's got a long-time name in the city, and people like him or hate him, but they know him. He's got name ID to begin with. Do you think that if there's a damn the incumbent vote, that the fact that there's only 2 challengers, does that give them a bonus this year?
Does. Yeah. I mean, you got to look at it from my standpoint. I think Abreu and Gomes in this past 2 years have been probably the most vocal. I think either one of them is going to be 1 or 2.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think depending on the Ward 1 vote tonight, whether that's going to save Linda Morad to be competitive in that 1 and 2 spot can be important. Carney, Coelho, Jansen, and the doctor, it's going to be within 1,000 votes, and anything can happen. That's what I think.
Brian Gomes has always been a perennial, front runner.
Oh, he's 10 times. People don't understand. This guy, if he comes in first tonight, it's his 10th time coming in first.
That's an amazing
in his
record.
career. He came in second
By
3 times, and he was appointed
But
once.
by how many votes last? Was it like 3? 2.
2 votes.
2 votes.
I got to tell you
right.
something. I made a bet with him that he'd come in second.
Oh, my
I won the
gosh.
bet, and then I told him, I voted for Linda and not you.
That's the voice of Tom Kennedy, former city councilor, and our guest tonight. A pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure.
Our veteran, former news director Jim Phillips, and Chris McCarthy, whose program on the weekends has just sparked this radio station. Tremendous, and it is compelling radio. Fabulous job. We're going to be right back, and we'll find out if we have any results coming in. Let's take a very quick break here from live election night coverage brought to you by J&S Guns and Ammo, 195 Perry Hill Road in Acushnet, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Election night coverage brought to you by J&S Guns and Ammo in Acushnet. I'm Phil Paleologos, joined by Jim Phillips, Chris McCarthy, and Tom Kennedy. Matt Costa is producing this for us this evening. Tim Weisberg in the newsroom. Taylor Cormier is at City Hall, and Tim Dunn is in the field as we are pretty much close to bringing you some results that are coming in. And I guess City Hall is, what exactly, how are they compiling these numbers that might be a little different?
Well, apparently they're not releasing them every few precincts at a time.
Right.
And sometimes that has been done in the past. But I guess for cautious sake, for being cautious,
Sure.
New election commissioner, they're going to wait till all the numbers come in.
And then give them in blocks.
Then just give them out. Just
Okay.
total the whole thing and give it out.
All right.
So we've seen both ways. We prefer releasing it every few precincts, but we're not. That's not our ballpark over there.
Chris, are you getting any information in?
Yeah, I have. We hesitate to step on our own new stuff, but it's coming out a little different this year. So we do have some numbers from the mayor's campaign that we think they're unofficial, but it looks like the mayor, did one handily, about 13,000 votes cast. Mayor got about 60%, coming in at about 8109. Charlie Perry, again, unofficially 53-35.
Okay, and these are unofficial.
These are numbers at the mayor's headquarters, so they are unofficial. And
they apparently have a beautiful PowerPoint presentation down there. Wait, it's nice when you got a couple $100,000 in the bank to run a campaign. Beautiful stuff.
And Charlie Perry supporters, I understand, are going to be meeting at 564 County Street. This is where they're going to have their party tonight. So anybody who wants to join Charlie Perry, the address is 564 County Street for that gathering. And we are still awaiting, of course, word on the referendum question.
Right. Charlie Perry, by the way, did very, very well in Ward 4. According to the mayor's numbers. And also, can we say what we know about Ward 4? Is that we comfortable with doing that?
I'm not sure. I think, why don't we have Taylor call in with that information now? Only because he's out there and we'd like to give him that.
Sure.
Absolutely. So, as we take another look around, nothing yet from Ward 1. That had how many candidates in it? Quite a few.
Well, initially in the preliminary, there was...
7?
8.
8?
No, 7. I'm sorry. 7 candidates.
All right. Yeah.
And the top vote getters were Melissa Costa and William Brad Markey, and they are the finalists today on the ballot. So, as Tom has mentioned, there's probably a much better turnout up there, so it should be exciting to see how the close preliminary. Let's see what happens in the final. Ward 2, not close in the preliminary, Giesta and Cartagena. And, I expect Giesta to win that rather comfortably, but, you never know until the votes are cast, but she had a big victory in the preliminary. Ward 4, close in the preliminary, probably close tonight, probably very close. And Ward 5, a contest. Scott Lima won the preliminary election. Paul Chase was second, but the margin was not astronomical, about 8 points. So with an increased turnout in Ward 5, you just might see a very close election there as well. We meant to talk about Mayor Mitchell earlier. We didn't do it. So I thought I'd just probably start out by saying the mayor is running on his competency and on his ability to get some things done. And clearly there are some areas where John Mitchell and his administration have done very well. One of them probably is unemployment, getting some people working again, getting small businesses to come in and hire folks.
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of that. And the promise, of course, of offshore wind, which is enormous if it will ever happen. I mean, Tom, it's going to be in your neighborhood practically down.
Absolutely. I mean, if it's okay, the whole thing, when you look back, in 1980, Jack Markey put up an anemometer to measure wind at Fort Rodman. That's how it began.
That's interesting.
I had requested that from him. From that point, I had a federal grant to put wind systems in Fort Rodman, committed, had to have the council approval, and they said no. So, I mean, when you look at it and what has transpired, the development of an energy commission. We had people here from Scotland coming in looking, trying to put ocean machines out there. The technology within wind systems themselves expanded to now they're like $2 million a piece. And then, which was really, really important, when Matt Morrissey came into the Economic Development Office and turned around and started focusing his energies here, you see where we are today. We've got an entity, Revolution Wind Downtown, that is competing for the lease out there, 30 miles away, okay? And the amount of wind machines, I think he said, were 25. These are giant machines, create enough electricity for 72,000 people. What I want to see is if the city can put their own machine within that lease area so that benefit comes directly, for example, to the sewage treatment plant. Because if we don't control that piece in some sort of way, then it just becomes part of the mix for the energy.
That's interesting.
A second office opened this past week, Bay State Wind.
Bay State Wind. Yep.
And so, I mean, we're going to be in this mix. I
Thank
can't
God.
tell you exactly when, but we are going to be in this mix whenever it happens.
That's why I voted for the mayor.
Okay.
Just for, we have other issues with the mayor. What else?
Education.
Education.
Look, he came in here 6 years ago, really concerned about the education, changed superintendents, brought in someone who was an agent for change. There's no other way to describe Pia Durkin. And she has attempted to change. She's shaken up the roster of personnel,
Yep.
and she's changed the way things are done here. Will it pay off in the long run? I hope so, but I'm not an educator. I can't tell you that everything that's been done is gonna work. But I clearly think if we'd stayed down that road that we're on, we probably have somebody from the state here running the schools.
Which I think would turn people away from wanting to invest in New Bedford. People would not want to move here because of becoming I'm not disparaging Chelsea, but the last thing you want to do is have a state takeover of your public schools. So she had a tough job. Whereas if she didn't do what she did, the state was going to come in and take it over.
And she still has a tough job.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not over.
Absolutely.
So, in the end, John Mitchell is responsible for whatever happens because he's the guy that made the change. I will also say that there's one other area that we have to talk about, that's crime. And John Mitchell has described crime in New Bedford as basically a perception. If you have the perception that we have a crime problem, then for you, it's a crime problem.
Right.
There are many other neighborhoods, perhaps, where crime isn't as big an issue. But if you live in one of those problem neighborhoods, then you perceive that we've got a crime problem here.
Absolutely.
And he has said, hey, I'm going to gear up an effort to go after those problem neighborhoods, to go after the bums that are in the problem neighborhoods and lock them up, drive them out, whatever he's got to do. And so that's a promise of this campaign. But for many people in New Bedford who live in those neighborhoods, they think he's all wrong, that New Bedford does have a crime problem, a serious crime problem. And something in the news today has got us all shaking our heads. A convenience store is going to close because management says it's been robbed too much.
It's terrible.
It's awful. And but it has been robbed a lot, I'll say that. The numbers show.
Right, but if that is what's going on, then the crime problem is worse than people perceive. If businesses are closing down because of it, that's a bad signal.
Yeah.
But and I agree. First of all, I think the city of New Bedford's a safe city. I think we all agree on that. Except that if you have crime going on right outside your door, it doesn't.
That's right.
That doesn't make a difference. What do they say about when another guy loses his job, it's a recession. When you lose your job, it's a depression. It's a similar.
That's
it's
right.
a similar thing.
Sure.
I would say this though. Looking at the results again, they're unofficial. They come in. John Mitchell won 2-1 in Ward 2, which is the heartbeat, which is where this convenience store is located, and where I think the Perry people thought they were going to make up some votes because they did okay up there, and with Giesta running in there, and it looks like Ward 1 also is where he really rolled things up. But those would be areas that are more sensitive. Not that other people aren't sensitive, but Ward 2 has had particular problems, as we discussed earlier, and yet the mayor rolled up 2-1 there.
Yes. We're going to, when we come back, go right to election results. You're listening to a live broadcast brought to you by J&S Guns and Ammo in Acushnet. This much we can tell you before we break away in Fall River. J.Zil Correa was reelected the mayor in Fall River.
Yeah, 60%.
We will be right back. Don't go away, folks.
Hiring is important, but
For their hiring.
All right, so 28 to 30% went out, okay? Because it's not showing up here, but that's, And like I said, Heather's going to read it, and then you can have these.
Okay, thank you. Total ballots cast, 14,098. For mayor, John Mitchell, 8,371. Charles Perry Jr., 5,496. Assessor, Marty Tredup, 10,095. School committee, Joshua Amaral, 7,942. Colleen DeWicki, 5,675. John Naomi Carney, 5,959. Deborah Coelho, 5,893. Brian Gomes, 7,510. Counselor Ward 1, Melissa Costa, 1,333. William Mark 2, 1,645. Cartagena, 368. Maria Geista, 1,115. Counselor Ward 3, Hugh Dunn, 1,385. Ward 4, Dana Rivero, 1,165. Joseph Jojo Forts, 1,117.
Can you repeat
Counselor Ward 5, Paul Chaffee, 1,421. Scott Lima, 1,610.
Counselor Ward 6, Joseph Lopes, 1,414. And for the ballot question, yes votes, 6,904. No votes, 6,127.
So, like I said, we have just the quick.
We have results coming in, and before we go and get those results, Tim Weisberg is in the newsroom.
Well, you're getting results from Taylor, is that?
We were going to go to Taylor on Facebook.
Okay.
But it's...
You have it from the beginning of the video, Matt, or do you want me to read them? Tell you what, you run the video and I'll chime in if I need to.
All righty, here we go. Here are your election results for today's election. That was the voice of Manny DeBrito, the new election commissioner.
Leave it on if you need it. Do you have a pen? Why don't you do that? I'll do this.
We are awaiting election results.
Well, I can tell you that there was a total of 14,098 votes cast.
14,098.
And for mayor, John Mitchell had 8,371 votes. Charlie Perry had 5,496 votes. So it looks like Mitchell won by about just about 3,000 votes there.
Yeah.
For assessor, Marty Tredup, running unopposed, had 1,025 votes.
Hi, Barry.
For school committee, Josh Amaral, 7,942 votes. The next highest was John Oliveira, 6,539 votes. Then we have Colleen DeWicki, 5,675 votes. And then Richard Porter III, 5,075 votes. So your winners there are Amaral, DeWicki, and John Oliveira. For Counselor at Large, the highest vote total appears to be Brian Gomes, 7,570, I believe. Just looking at my chicken scratch. Ian Abreu, 7,468. Then the next highest would be Naomi Carney, 5,959. Deborah Coelho, 5,893. I'm sorry, Linda Morad had 7,020. So those are your incumbents all got reelected.
Wait, okay, but where was the order of Linda Morad?
Linda Morad would have been, I'm sorry, she would have been number 3. So it would have gone Gomes, Abreu, Morad, then Carney, then Coelho. Then Christopher Burrell had 4,217 votes. Mike Jansen, 3,260 votes.
Interesting. How many votes separated 5 from 6?
5 from 6. So we're talking Coelho from Burrell. We're looking at
1,600.
Yeah, about that. Yep. Then going over to Ward 1, we have William Markey with 1,645 votes. Melissa Costa with 1,333 votes. We will get back to you on the Ward 2 because the video cut out during that. Of course, Hugh Dunn running unopposed in Ward 3. In Ward 4, very, very close. We have Dana Ribeiro, 1,165 votes. Jojo Forts, 1,117 votes. So we're talking less than 40 votes between the two of them. 38 votes, it looks like, by my quick math.
Okay. That seems like a repeat, right?
48?
Yeah.
This is why I work in news and not as a math teacher. And in Ward 5, we have Scott Lima, 1,610 votes. Paul Chase, 1,421 votes.
That was a close one as well.
And
So-
are you ready
Yes.
for the mayoral question? Does the mayoral term get extended to 4 years? Yes, 6,904 votes. No, 6,127 votes.
Oh, my goodness. And what's the difference there?
That we are looking at a difference of... I'm going to go to Jim. He's smarter than me.
770, something like that.
Wow. So that was a tight one there. So so far, and these are the finals, right?
These are the as announced by the election office just moments ago.
All right.
And we will get these up quickly on WBSM.com as fast as we can.
We need Ward 2, Tim.
I will get Ward 2 for you as soon as I possibly can.
Thank you so much, Tim Weisberg, in our newsroom. Surprises?
Well, I think look, the incumbents all got reelected. I think Ian Abram moved up quite a bit.
Yes.
Brian Gomes, look what number 10? 10th time he's been the number one, right? Yep. That's a big deal. But the 4-year term, to me is incredible. I thought
that's a big headline.
Yeah,
that's
a huge change in the city of New Bedford.
Oh, absolutely.
Be interesting to see if the guy who was most against it now runs for a 4-year term.
Well, that would be interesting, but it's also noted that one of the worst things to do is legislate by the ballot box. It's not sometimes a good idea because people don't really understand every ramification of it. But I can't help but agree with everything you've said. Jim?
Well, I think Tom said it best. We have a lot of unanswered questions here. This question doesn't spell out some of these questions.
No, it
doesn't. Is there a
doesn't.
recall provision?
No, it's not. There's not.
Can we yank a guy out of there? Will there be a street fight before we can, it doesn't answer any of this.
That's right. And how
where does it go?
How do you amend it? Is that?
Yeah, let me
how do you amend that? It's
where does
done
it-
by ballot. It's changing the charter of the city.
Sure.
in terms- So if you want to say you want to put a provision in there, you got to do that same.
Does this
What
require
process?
the legislature to have any action here on the
That's a
charter?
great question. That is a great question.
Yeah, is there a home
it's,
rule?
It's all home rule. It's all done here.
I think it's because it's a change in the local charter. It's done by local.
And I
local
believe
petition.
that's how Springfield and Boston and Lawrence did it. But, this is going to be a huge story in tomorrow's morning news that we want you to join us for. I know the Rick Kidder, the chamber president and CEO, voiced an enormous amount of support behind this. And some of the, let's call them some of the leading visionaries in New Bedford were behind this whole question, Jim.
Well, they were. The group New Bedford Forward
Yeah.
was made up of business types, I believe,
Sure.
for the most part. Look, I just think there's a lot of things that got to happen now to flush this out a little bit. And I don't know. Do we need to go through this whole charter thing again to make changes to this?
That's
or
correct.
to add to it?
That's correct.
You really think we do?
Well, unless you can create a different way of recalling people, you can't simply do it by ordinance. You got to petition and you got to present, and it's got to be voted on. Sunset provisions, how many 4-year terms in a row, all that kind of stuff.
This is going to be very complicated.
So I think it was rushed through, and I don't particularly like it.
Yeah.
Well, the question was very simple.
Yeah, but
The
Right.
repercussions are.
and my earliest question was there enough debate, enough understanding behind this question for people to go to the polls and vote on it? I think not to get off base, but I think marijuana was very much the same way.
Absolutely.
Right, Chris?
Absolutely. There was very little discussion on it, and I guess I thought it was going to pass, but it's a very strange. It's a big change. This is a big change in the structure of the city of New Bedford. It's made the mayor, whoever they are, he or she, a much more powerful figure in a situation where they were already extremely powerful.
That's correct.
I mean, this is this could be this could be the last election in New Bedford.
That's interesting.
The next person who gets elected to a 4-year term.
Yep, absolutely. And
Mayor for life.
This kicks in whoever is elected in 2019.
Yes.
In the electoral.
Yep.
2019.
Yep, next election.
Next election 2 years from now.
Yeah. Okay. So there you
And if
go.
there's an open seat for that, can you imagine? Wow.
That is going to be a very interesting. Well, this is
Because
democracy with a small d.
Well, understand this: you need your three highest years to get a pension, to get the top pension. So if you've got your 20 years in, You just need one term now to get 3 years at $100,000. Not that would motivate anybody, gentlemen. You understand? But I'm just pointing that out here at the because when it's not about the money, it's about the money.
Let's talk about what so many people, lay people, were saying. It would cut down on the constant campaigning. How does this now affect campaign financing? Going to the parties, the fundraisers, the ticket sales.
They'll sell just as many, and there'll be just as many.
So
why would you waste the time?
So this wouldn't really change anything in that
it's going to make it better for the incumbent. It's going to make it much better for the incumbent. Why would you waste? Why would you give up a year?
Let's go into the newsroom right now. Tim Weisberg has an update.
Ward 2.
Yes.
We have Maria Giesta, 1,115 votes. Edwin Cartagena, 368.
My goodness. Wow. So a decisive win there for Maria Giesta. Not that this is surprising, but very much his approach to this position, Chris, was very much like Charlie Perry's. He was very well liked and respected in the community as a good-hearted, a Samaritan of sorts, right?
Right.
And with very little political background or expertise.
Right.
I mean, Maria Giesta, let's face it, she was the right hand of Barney Frank. So if anyone knew, the landscape, it was Maria.
No, it should be a good contribution to the city council.
Let's hope so.
I would think.
I think we need to have all hands on deck. The city needs everybody's help in fighting crime and improving the schools, in controlling taxes somehow.
Right.
Trying to find a way to bring down the tax rate. So everybody needs to jump on board. And like I said earlier, I don't think we need to wait 6 or 8, 10 meetings to get your feet wet. It's time to go.
Does this also make her the first woman elected in Ward 2?
That's a good question.
And it also adds another woman to the city council,
which is great.
Yeah, I
don't know. I can't go that far back in Ward 2.
Sean Barton, and then
Kazera. You had Kazeras. You had multiple Kazeras.
And then Martin.
You had Kalis.
Yeah, she may be the very first. I wonder who's going to become your next city council president.
Very interesting. Usually there's a lot of lobbying that goes on within the council, but I think because of Council Martins, Winterson, and Olvera not being there, the ability of a person to garner enough votes, it was held off, and nobody's talking about it. I tried to talk to a few councilors tonight, and they weren't saying nothing. But, I would, as a person covering this tonight, congratulate Council Martins, Winterson, and Olvera for the service. Sure. We want to thank them for what they've done. They've all been involved for a very long time, and I'm sort of glad they participated because they did add a certain balance to the council.
You betcha, and that thanks comes from everyone. Everyone who steps into the public arena has to be embraced with gratitude, especially these days. Any surprises, Jim? You're seeing some of the numbers there.
Well, the question, of course, is the number one surprise.
Yeah, and why don't you repeat that? And I do want to also tell our listeners that this is brought to you by J&S Guns and Ammo, 195 Perry Hill Road in Acushnet. Thank you to John Leonard and his staff. Just perhaps some of the more stunning races and the question.
The question was stunning. There's no question about it. No pun intended there. But really, when Tim read the numbers, all of us were taken aback.
Sure.
780 votes is the margin, and I know that we had a bunch of folks working for the change to make it happen, but everyone I talked to said no.
I know.
No. We don't want to. We don't
I
want
thought
that.
it was going down badly.
We want to vote on the mayor every 2 years. That's his report card. That's his term limit. That's how it works.
Jim, let's see if we have the mayor on right now. Hello. No, he hasn't. This is
You're on the air, Taylor.
But you are on the air, Taylor. Right. Yes, we did. I think we have all of the results here, but are there any other results that were incomplete? I think we have everything. Yeah, that would be great, and Charlie Perry as well. What was the reaction, if any, to some of the races and the question? That seems to be the real blockbuster, Taylor. The question passing with. Mm-hmm. It'll be sure. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting tomorrow. I'm sure we're going to hear from all of the winners and perhaps even those who came in close. I'm sure Scott Lang will chime in on this, and I'm wondering what's going through his head right now. And any other race that took you by surprise? Ward 4, Taylor?
Nothing really surprised me so far. I was a little bit surprised. Somewhat, and I'll say this with a bit of a caveat here. In Ward 2, I'm not surprised that Maria Giesta won. Her preliminary returns came very similar to this, 1,115 to Edwin Cartagena's 368. What I'm surprised about at that race is I didn't see much campaigning from Ed Cartagena. He was spending much of his campaign volunteering, and I believe he meant for that volunteerism to show that that's his campaign, that he's running on his hard work for the city of New Bedford and the people, the inhabitants, and their families. He spent numerous hours in Puerto Rico, days, weeks on end in Puerto Rico, delivering supplies, organized all kinds of drives, donating tons and tons of food and supplies. Really yeoman's work, God's work that he
learned a lesson.
Put out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he might have hoped that would reflect back on his campaign, but it's possible that some people took that as a disinterest in the campaign and misinterpreted that. So that's what I'm surprised about, that didn't kind of come back on him in the way that he had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure he's a bit disappointed tonight.
Right.
I'm surprised that Richard Porter didn't do better in the school committee race, to be honest with you.
I am, too. I mean,
he had an apple in all of his ads.
Sure.
That generally works if you're running for school committee.
But here's an educator.
Well, I can tell you, John Oliveira, if he doesn't get too upset with me over this, he was kind of the Donald Trump of the group here.
Mm-hmm.
Very outspoken, not politically correct at all, and told it like it is during the debates, or at least how he saw it. And I think that resonated a lot with the voters, and you see that reflected here as well.
Sure, absolutely. And the order of the at-large candidates, any surprise there? Because on the air we had a few callers maybe hint that Brian Gomes and Linda Morad could suffer somewhat of a, right, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. You know how this goes. Everyone's... People do what they do. Voters, that's why it comes so hard to beat.
Well,
right?
I figured Ian Abreu would take first or second place. He campaigned pretty heavily throughout this entire campaign.
Yes.
So him getting second place is not surprising to me. Linda taking third when she overtook first place several years ago from Brian Gomes, I believe when she returned from her hiatus. That was a bit of an upset, but she's in third place tonight. So you have Naomi Carney in fourth and Deborah Coelho in fifth. No, it's not too surprising. I obviously with the heavy campaigning, and name recognition. Those will get you very far in these races.
Oh, absolutely. So, summarizing your thoughts from City Hall, Taylor?
Well, I mean, again, kind of a lackluster night here as far as coverage standpoint. It's not the way it used to be. I came in at the end of at the beginning of the transition from paper to paperless, and I like the paper a lot better, really. I'm an old-fashioned guy anyway, but it takes a lot of the oomph out of the night, and builds in a lot more frustration. But you have a solid return here from the way people campaigned.
Yes,
is what I'm seeing, and I hope that carries over into the next election as well.
Hey, Taylor, just from this is Manny DiBerto's first election as a new election commissioner. Looks like the night came off flawless.
It was a bit slow, I'll say that, and not because of anything they were doing here, just because of the process. It's very encumbering to begin with, and it is his first time. But he had his slew of office staff working around him and helping out whenever they could, and they did a phenomenal job. What really kills you is the people out in the field getting the unofficial results from the poll workers as the polls close.
Sure.
That'll. But you had Mayor John Mitchell giving his campaign speech, his victory speech, practically an hour before we got any official results here at City Hall. So that's where we see some frustrations coming in.
Taylor, let me ask you: will we hear from Charlie, and will we hear from John?
Well, John was instructed earlier in the night to call as soon as he could. He has not done so yet. So the sooner I get off this phone, I can have him do so, and I can instruct Charlie to do so as well.
Okay, we appreciate it so much. Taylor Cormier, WBSM News Director, and Tim Dunn in the field.
All right,
Taylor,
I got to get off the phone.
All righty. Thank you so much. All righty. So we'll be expecting a phone call shortly from re-elected Mayor John Mitchell.
But I just want to go back to the point. Really, and it's not a position you can take on this one, Phil, because it's your son-in-law. But I come from a time of doing elections in the city where sometimes there were no votes in precincts for a long time incumbents. I mean, I've seen some elections really screwed up down there. But it looks like this at Manny's first election through this thing alone, pretty flawless. So hats off to him and to the staff down there, and because we've seen some real screw ups in the past. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
And
poll workers too.
Pull that mic close to you. The poll workers
and the poll workers.
Yeah, absolutely. But the two women in the election office are absolute fabulous veterans. They know everything about that office. They've been there for close to 30 years, so you have to.
And yet they're all only
them.
25.
That's the that's the beautiful part of it all. So as we broadcast the local election results, folks, and thank J&S Guns and Ammo, we're going to be signing off in just about 15 minutes. So in the meanwhile, I hope we can hear from Mayor John Mitchell, who, by the way, he voiced his support for moving terms for New Bedford mayor from 2 years to 4 years. The goal was to get the city council to make the change. And I wonder what he'll have to say about this now. That's going to be one of the issues tomorrow. The big story in your mind, Chris?
I think it's the 4-year term. I think without a doubt that's the big story. I think the two candidates in Ward 5, it could have gone either way.
Right.
Ward 1, I think was close too. I think we knew what was going to happen in Ward 2, and we pretty sure the incumbents were going to get reelected. But the real story is the 4-year term and what it means for the political landscape going forward.
Yes. And we'll, of course, analyze all the changes that will now have to happen and the timeline of those changes. I mean, I guess they have 2 years plus to get things in order. Right, Jim?
They do. And, again, there are some questions here that have to be, straightened out.
Sure.
This is a monumental change. This is not some small thing to all of a sudden take this to 4 years.
It is a change in the city charter.
Well, I mean, the mayor's races, frankly, mayor's elections drive city elections.
Sure.
So now, if you're going to have a mayor's race in 19 and then not have one in 21, Yikes.
We could have some voter apathy in between.
We could see some of that zero stuff.
Well, legitimate ones, though. Yeah. But you also may see whoever the mayor is running a slate of candidates now.
That's right.
Because so now you've got the off year where he doesn't have to spend his own campaign money, so now they can organize and back 1, 2, 3, 4 candidates and run a slate. This is really going to make a change in the dynamics of New Bedford.
No doubt about it.
It's the consequences. It isn't so much the vote tonight, it's the consequences of the vote
Tom.
that people aren't going to expect. But another thing, and in my opinion, not too far behind, is the 10th time Councilor at Large Gomes came in first. That is unprecedented in our history. So, the populist candidate that he is, and the effort that he shows, people appreciate. So, it's sort of a special congratulations to him.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, it's unprecedented. And
he spent no money.
Yeah, basically.
Spent no money on the campaign.
That's right.
Just as Brian.
He had some of his older signs that he put up, the perennial favorites, and the same locations. So as we wrap things up here, summarizing your thoughts on the night, Tom Kennedy, and by the way, it's a pleasure to have you here. This is somewhat of a tradition, too.
Yeah, it's starting to be. I'm happy that the percentage of voter turnout went over 23.2% that I had predicted, and that's a good thing. I think Jim's right. We've got to really get down to brass tacks on culling the stock of voters in New Bedford to give us a better percentage, possibly. Again, the 4-year vote was a little bit shocking to me. In the at-large race, I thought it might turn out to be a little more volatile. It didn't, and I think that's largely because of the campaigning of the challenges, or the lack thereof, because that's a difficult race. I've run it 10 times myself. It's hard. I think throughout the city, the newcomers are going to have to jump on board, as Jim said, relatively quickly. It's not a difficult thing. It's an honorable thing, and people will allow for a certain amount of mistakes early on. So it's good to go ahead and make them and learn from them and move forward. I think the vision of the city presented by the mayor is a good one. I'm really excited about the energy proposals that have come through his administration and the creation of jobs that come with it. And we've got to focus a lot on the crime issue because I think they're missing it. I think they're insulated from it, from neighborhoods that used to be okay, that aren't okay anymore. And we've got to start addressing issues to the dealers. Coddling the users is one thing, and the narcade and stuff like that. It's necessary. It's human. But we've got to have that response to get in the heads of the dealers. And I think stronger, more severe laws is the way to go.
And what about, before we leave that subject, the additional DEA agents and soldiers coming to New Bedford to fight the drug war? Is that the right approach to take?
Absolutely. I mean, as soon as they turn one, and these people will turn on their brother if their brother's dealing, you're going to find that most of the stuff comes in through Providence, comes in through the bus lines, okay, comes in through Brockton. Most of the people doing the dealing aren't born and raised in New Bedford, and we all pay a price for that.
Absolutely.
We're not educating these people. These are people that participated in our little leagues.
Mm-hmm.
The culture that we had in New Bedford is slowly being destroyed. That has to change. Now they're killing people.
Yes.
So it's time.
It's time. I'm going to ask Chris to summarize your thoughts, and we'll end with our veteran, former news director, Jim Phillips.
Well, first of all, I like to always point out when I'm wrong about things, and I was certainly wrong about this 4-year term. I mean, I really was. I was mellow on the air about it, but quite frankly, off the air, I thought this thing was going to big loser. It was going to go down like the Hindenburg, and and it was a tight race, but it won. I think it'll be interesting to look going forward. I do think the school committee is going to be interesting because you've lost Larry Fiddley and Jack Nobriga, veteran guys who had a real institutional knowledge.
Right.
They're gone, and now you've got 2 new people on there. So that's going to be a change, as you pointed out at the beginning, Phil. And then I think it's going to be fabulous to see this whole group of new counselors get together and come to work with the other ones. And maybe they can all get together in this intern period before they come in January.
Chris, let me have you finish your thoughts in just a moment, but do we have the mayor on the line right now? Is Bear Mitchell with us? Maybe not. All right. So who's on this line, please?
Hi, gentlemen. This is Ian Abreu.
It is Ian Abreu. All right.
How are you all?
All righty, we have Ian. I want you to hold right there, Ian, because we understand you have a lot to be proud of, but we have Charlie Perry on. I want to get to him first. And I believe Charlie is not right there. Okay, we don't have him.
Live radio, folks.
He's getting on the
live
phone
radio.
in just a second. So in the meanwhile, let's go back to Ian Abreu. You're very proud, I'm sure, of coming up so many notches, Ian. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm just, again, of course, honored and humbled by the showing of support from all my friends, neighbors here in our city. In 2015, when I was first elected, I had won the fifth seat by just a little over 4,000 votes, and then today we finished over 7,000. So certainly, I'm honored and humbled. I'm really at a loss for words. I just can't thank the residents of our city enough for once again bestowing that honor upon me to serve as one of their elected representatives for another 2 years. Without a doubt, it has certainly been the professional honor of my life.
Let me ask you, any surprises tonight, most especially with how the question went down or went up, depending on your perspective?
Well, honestly, I thought question 4 was going to fail. It seemed that, between Scott Lang and all the pushback on social media and on open line, but it just goes to show you a great ground game by the forward people. And, of course, in my other life, my boss, Rick Kidder, our friend, and the work he did at the Chamber to really push that initiative with Christian Farland and the business community. So it was a close one, but congratulations to them on passing that forward. That was the big surprise to me. I thought that was going to fail, to be quite honest with you. But, hey, the people of New Bedford have spoken, and we have to bestow the will of the people. So,
all righty. And Jim Phillips here.
Ian, we're talking about the new councilors. There will be an influx of new councilors sitting with you come January. And I want those folks to get right in, dive into work. There's too much work for them to wait 5 or 6 months to get going. And you are the guy that they can follow. You're the mentor. You're the guy that they can. It didn't take you 10 meetings to get your feet wet.
That's right.
And these folks shouldn't have that either. Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely.
On your win tonight.
All right, Ian, we are tight on time, so call in tomorrow in the morning, and we'll resume our congratulations then, all right?
All righty. Thank you, gentlemen. Great job.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Ian Abreu, who has placed now second, coming up the ladder from, where was he the last election? Was it fifth? Yes, that's right.
You know what they call you when you come in fifth?
What do they call you?
Counselor.
I want to just reiterate that this broadcast is brought to you by J&S Guns and Ammo in Acushnet. We'll be right back as we wrap things up.
One size fits all has no place in your bedroom. Hi, I'm Christian von Rickenbach, founder of Helix Sleep, and we know one man.
Wrap up election night coverage here at 1420 WBSM on YouTube and on, let's see, Facebook, Smart TV, Smart Box. They're all smart, Jim.
Yeah, we're not so smart.
We're not, but the TVs and the smart boxes are.
Yeah.
Let's recap today's election results. And then, of course, tomorrow morning, we want you to tune in, folks, for all of the latest results from 6 to 10 on the morning show. But right now, Jim, we have quite a few news stories. The question, of course, being the lead.
That's it. That is the headline tomorrow. The question was, shall the term of the office of the mayor of the city of New Bedford be 4 years? The voters said yes. Fairly close, 780 votes, but nonetheless, the voters said yes. There was, it would seem, when you talk to people, they just didn't want this to happen. But there were some community groups out there, the Chamber, New Bedford Forward, they prevailed here today. Still
And
some
so
questions
New
about
Bedford joins Quincy, Lynn, Lawrence, Springfield, and Boston, who also changed their city charters to the same.
The other headline is that John Mitchell was reelected mayor of New Bedford. Not unexpected. Mitchell will make that 8371, 8,371. Charlie Perry, 5496. School committee, a couple of new faces. In addition to Josh Amaral, we had John Oliveira finishing number 2 in that election. Colleen DeWicki, number 3rd. Richard Poirier, number 3 rather. Richard Poirier, number 4, out of the money. Councilor at large, all the incumbents were the winning election today. Brian Gomes, number 1. Ian Abreu, you just heard a moment ago, number 2. It was Linda Morad, number 3. Naomi Carney, number 4. And Deborah Coelho, number 5. And then we had the ward races, which Markey defeated Costa Giesta over Cartagena. In Ward 4, Dana Ribeiro, very close race, 48 over Jojo Forts. Might see a recount there. And number 5, it was Lima over Chase by 190 votes or so.
Quite a night, and we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Jim, as always, thank you. Chris McCarthy, thank you so very much.
Thanks for including me, Phil. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Jim.
my
Thank
gosh,
you, Phil.
part of the family. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank our special guest, of course, Tom Kennedy, and all of you for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow morning, fresh and early, to give you an early morning look at the results of today's election. On behalf of everyone here at 1420 WBSM, and thanks to J&S Guns and Ammo in Acushnet, I'm Phil Paleologos. Good night, everybody.